It's time for Focus on the State Capitol, hosted by Fred Dicker. Fred has been hosting a daily radio program focused on state issues for more than 20 years and brings his knowledge, professionalism, and skilled insight to each program. Now, Focus on the State Capitol with Fred Dicker on Talk 1300.
Well, Randy Credico is well known to listeners to this show. I've got a couple of theme songs that I often play for Randy. This is the Beautiful song by Phil Oakes, and it's a serious song. And this is to introduce Randy in a serious mode. He's a political activist besides being a comedian. And right now, his activism has taken the form of his being fired at WBAI down in New York City, although he may challenge the characterization of it being fired. But it's a cause that he's been very much involved with that led to his firing. It's been taken up by a great many people, including an international figure. The WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, has tweeted out information about what's happened to Randy. He's obviously concerned about Randy Credico. And Randy's joining us right now to talk about that and some related matters. Good morning, Randy. Good to have you with us again.
Hey, it's great to be on the show, Fred. And I got to tell you something, that your audience has spiked dramatically today, because there is an international following that I have, that I'm in concert with a great crew of loyal listeners that have been very concerned about the ongoing crisis at WBAI, and really a vendetta against me by the interim program director, who I believe will be let go very soon.
Hold on for a second. Let me just mention, I grew up in New York City. I knew about WBAI. I think I appeared on it a few times. WBAI back then was a very well-known station, as it is now. It's genuinely listener-supported. It originated out of California. I've mentioned this before. Right. Pacifica Radio. They were left-wing activists after World War II who created, in a way, the concept of publicly supported radio. They got a license out there, then a second license. They got licensed in New York City. And WBAI was always an alternative source well before there was something called public radio on PBS with and they did it without any government money. And WBAI still survives in New York, but it's been torn by some internal fights over the years. That's often the case on the left. And just really wanted to provide that as some background, because right now there's a bitter struggle for control of the station going on. Isn't that correct?
Yes, there really is. First of all, it's part of a network, as you just pointed out. It started out, Lou Hill began, I think, in 1947-48. He was a anti-war activist, a conscientious objector. And so he started the station there, and it's blossomed into 5. It's a beautiful network, Fred. It really is, and there's great, diverse programming on all of the different stations. WBAI has some incredible shows, musically, politically. They got great producers there. The only problem is that, this internecine stuff that happens on the left, we do have an unwanted program director there that kind of insinuated himself in.
What's his name?
His name, Tony Bates is his name. Tony Bates is has drifted around from various, stations and kicked out. And so he was actually kicked out of WBAI back in 2011 for reasons I don't want to get into, but certainly they are not very flattering. And so he came back, and he's basically taken control, he's taken some great shows and dumped them and brought in some of his friends to replace them. And so there's a lot of, he's not liked at the station. We got what's called a local station board, and it's democratically elected by the listeners and by the fellow producers, and they've all rejected the person, but the general manager has not acted in a year to replace and put in a program director, so he's been sticking around. He's been giving me a hard time ever since the beginning, since the onset of my Assange series. I was the favorite there. I did, as you know, I was doing 3 or 4 shows a week. I was doing all the public affairs shows. I did the inauguration of Trump. I did the State of the State. I was doing all these special shows. And once we started, Fred, with the Assange series back April 2nd, he took offense to that I was doing a show, my show, and trying to dictate the content. Now, your show, Fred, you do what you want. You do whatever you want. And the owner of the station never interferes with you. You have me on, and I'm contrary to a lot of your listeners' political sentiments. But I got to give Paul Vanderveer Vandenberg a shout out, because he has always allowed his host. He does not interfere. Well, this guy has interfered at the station. The vast majority, with the exception of a few, who have been bought off with some extra time.
Well, what way is he interfering, though? I mean, I would think that Julian Assange. Hold on for a second, Randy. I would think Julian Assange and what he represents, for instance, would be somebody and something that the station's listeners would support and value. What has he tried to censor you about?
He's pushing. It's basically because I've been doing this stuff that contradicts. As my good friend William Benny, who's been on, and he complained about that because I had him on, who's been on Sean Hannity's show and just met with Pompeo. We disagree with the narrative that the Russians hacked the election. And that's been my point of view. I still believe that. There's still no evidence, no hard evidence that the Russians hacked the election, that it was a inside job, just as Mr. Benny told Mr. Pompeo the other day. And look, I'm not a Trump fan. You understand that. But if you want to go after him, go after him for legitimate reasons. If he's done something wrong with the so-called emoluments, if they can find something there. But this is not the way to take him out. And obviously they want to take him out somehow. And they're using and they're pushing and they're keeping this thing. And I've been using, my show, and I've got a great audience right now. I have my.
Randy, hold on for a second. Hold on for a second. Firstly, it seems to me any radio producer, director, any station manager would have been thrilled with the coup that you had in getting Julian Assange on your show, whether you want to likes him, dislikes him, thinks he's a traitor or a wonderful world figure. That should have been a real plus. And then secondly, I would think WBAI's listeners, by definition, are listeners who want to hear a perspective, especially one from somebody like yourself with credentials on the left. So why would they have? I don't understand the rationale of being hostile to you.
Felipe Luciano, who who's a great, he was on WABC, on Good Morning. He was on all these programs here, very respected musically and politically, and he's a moderate guy. Felipe Luciano, the Puerto Rican host, he finally walked out because of the treatment that he was receiving, and others have. Reverend Billy, there's a lot of people who have left rather than take the kind of error and terror from this guy. Now, I want you to know that I love this station, and I do. He is accusing me of organizing a boycott, and he even said that I was doing that with John Pilger, who's won 140 awards. 2 of the highest awards in the world, the British Journalist Award. And so he really rankled that guy, and he came back, and I sent you the email.
I saw it.
All right, so he's...
Pilger says it's absolutely false, that you're not doing that at all. And I haven't heard you suggest there should be a boycott.
Of course not. I am supporting. In fact, they're playing my carts that I've done for the station. I have done so much for that station for 36 years, and this interloper comes in, and he's been there for a year, unwanted basically, and I don't think he'll be there that much longer, and I think I will be back. But I haven't been doing my show there, Fred. My shows I've been doing from my phone because I don't want to go in there. It's so uncomfortable going in there as it is right now. And I love all of the hosts there. They I know that they support me, and somebody had to take a stand, and I took a stand against him. And that's basically the reason why they blew off a whistleblower, because I know a lot about what management does there, and they took it out, and all it's going to do is get worse at that station. But as I said, I really do. That station needs to survive, not go down. And I would never organize a boycott. It was a blatant lie, libelous. It's libelous. I'm considering filing a lawsuit against the interim program, Dwayne Tuck program director, whatever you want to call him.
Were you surprised, Randy, that weighed in, I guess, from the Ecuadorian embassy in London on your behalf he was expressing concern about what was going on?
Yes, he was really,
were you surprised by that at all?
I was not surprised, no, because, and then plus what he said was, Pamela Anderson is supporting me. You know how hard it is to get Pamela Anderson on any show when the paparazzi is following her around? She did my show, Pamela Anderson. I have a Cornell West who never does anything but major shows, Bill Maher and somebody, but he's done this show. I've got incredible guests on the show, Craig Murray. I'm getting not just Assange, but many others are coming forward. And they lost a big audience, Fred. Remember, right now you got hundreds and hundreds of people I know who are listening because I'm checking my email, my Twitter feed, and people are listening in Denmark. I know in London they are.
Oh, I see
in,
that.
Germany,
what is Anonymous Scandinavia? Something called Anonymous Scandinavia on Twitter. Just with 18,500 followers, has tweeted out that you're on this show live right now. Do you know who Anonymous Scandinavia is?
Yes, I do. I do know who that individual is, and he's a very talented gentleman who makes beautiful videos, and he's someone to follow. A very smart guy, and a lot of these people do not like Hillary Clinton, and I was very hard on Hillary Clinton, and they said, "Why aren't you balanced? Why aren't you balanced?" Well, I was supporting Jill Stein, and I didn't like Hillary Clinton, and it turns out Hillary Clinton is getting in bigger and bigger trouble, and nobody is talking about. Finally, they're talking about collusion with the Russians because she paid for this Steele document, this Steele memo.
The Fusion GPS.
Yes, well, you can't tell me she didn't know about that, and what Donna Brazil is saying is what I've been saying all along.
That's true.
I've been saying that all along, and Brazil finally came out and let the cat out of the bag, and we know that they tampered with democracy, the DNC, Tom Perez, and all these guys, they tampered with our democracy. Yep. That's what it's all about, and Adam Schiff should be going after them. Adam Schiff should be going after the DNC for undermining our democracy.
Well, he's their agent. Not? There's no question about it. Where does it go from here, Randy? I want to ask you about a couple of other things, but what happens now? Because you've said you may head off to Europe. You're looking to start another Spanish Civil War. Is that what you're up to?
I'm going to go to London just for as a reporter for KPFA, a sister station, the flagship station out of San Francisco, and report on a FOIA request by the great Italian La Repubblica reporter Stefano Maurizi, so I'm going to cover that, and then I'm going to go to Catalan and also for
Catalonia in Spain, Barcelona.
Catalonia, about Barcelona, and report on what's going on there. So I just interviewed a journalist, a writer there. I'm still on. They can't suppress me at WBAI. And I know a lot of the producers are upset that I'm gone. They can't suppress my voice. I am on at Pacifica, KPFA. It's got 10 times the listeners over there, and it's on in six or seven other stations. And I got you, Fred, on Friday.
You got to call me as well from Catalonia. I'd love to get you some of your insights into what's
Fred.
going on there.
You're going to get me next week, Fred. I will definitely, because it's 6 hours later there, so it'd be perfect for me to do it 10 o'clock in the morning your time, which would be 4 o'clock there. So I will definitely, it may not be Friday, it may be Thursday, whenever the action is. But I'm really looking forward to doing this. And from London, whatever you want, Fred. You have not suppressed my voice. Paul Vandenberg has not suppressed my voice here.
I value your voice. Just quickly, speaking of valuing your voice, Randy, you got crushed on Tuesday. You were one of the lead figures trying to get a constitutional convention approved in New York. You got buried. What do you make of what happened?
Well, I make it out to lie, disinformation.
Those are your lefty friends, by the way, who buried it.
Yeah, I guess, the left is not that, they have, they're sleeping with the enemy. They're sleeping with the governor. I mean, I don't know how they could be so close to this governor who's not their friend. They're basically supporting another 4 years of the Republican administration, doing nothing, not opening up the books. Even gambling is illegal according to the Constitution. There were a lot of things Errol Lewis pointed out, a lot of things that could have been fixed with a constitutional convention, and they're afraid of democracy. Basically, this is a democratic state, and these democratic operatives and their $300,000 a year union leaders like Mulgrew, whatever his name is, from UFT. What are they afraid of? They don't want their rank and file to. They can't go out and run as a delegate. We have to go through this process. Andrew Cuomo, a fixed election because he got $30 million already, although he is going to get, and I swear on the soul of my grandchildren, that there will be a primary for Andrew Cuomo, and I know at least one person that's confirmed that's running, and I cannot say who it is, right now, who he or she is.
Is it someone of some stature, though? It's going to take someone of some stature.
Yeah, someone that's going to make this a very exciting race, Fred. And I say this, and I'm sure you'll know in the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe first week in January, but there is a person that will be making an announcement, and this is going to be an exciting. He's going to have a real tough road to hoe. Andrew Cuomo trying to silence his opposition because there's going to be a groundswell of support, particularly when it coincides with the Prococo and the Sunni trials that are coming up,
yes.
And then also with the
retrials
of
Skelos
and so all of that, right. It redounds on Andrew Cuomo because that's where the chicken rots from the neck down or from the rooster, from the horns up, whatever you want to call it. And Andrew Cuomo is the one. His secrecy, the Port Authority, all these got to be in the open, and this is going to be the most exciting race in the country.
Randy, has your friend Bill Samuels recovered yet? He spent, $400,000 of his own money and just got buried in his effort to get a con.
Yes,
that was money down the drain.
I was with him on the day of of that, and Zach Fink did some great, explanation, explaining why we got buried, and the fact that the ballot was on the other side.
That was no big deal. That was easy to find.
Okay, but the lack of public knowledge, the fact that we're going to see $300 million of Startup New York ads continue, endlessly continue when they're not yielding any results, they're draining the public coffers. That could have been used to educate the public about the fact that you want to promote democracy, not hide it. And that's what Andrew Cuomo and the legislature has done. They've hidden democracy. They should have used that money. That money instead of a slush fund for his friends that make those ads and spending it and hoodwinking the public and taking money from the public, wasting it.
How about the fact, Randy, that Cuomo's on his way to Hollywood now to collect whatever it is, $1.5 million, whatever he's going to raise from the very Hollywood moguls who receive hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks that he approves from the state economic development programs. You talk about a direct connection.
The EDS is, I consider to be the most corrupt agency in the entire state, and that is not easy to do. I consider them to be the most corrupt. Yes, the Empire State Development Corporation, right. I consider to be, and that will be an issue.
Well, they're an arm of the Cuomo political campaigns. That's been true in the past, but we've never seen it, that is with past governors, but we've never seen it as egregious as it is now.
Tweed would be blushing, okay, at what goes on.
At least the Tweed
today.
Corruption produced results for New York.
Right.
New York was booming when Tammany Hall was at its apex. New York is shrinking now.
You got to see this monument to Tweed, which is the Tweed Courthouse, which is where I vote. It is a beautiful edifice. It's really.
Remember, Cuomo announced there back in 2010. He said he was going to end corruption. He's got arguably the most corrupt government in modern New York history. Just ask Preet Bharara about that.
Yes, Preet Bharara is going to be speaking, I think, in the next week. I agree with him. It is the most corrupt government that I have known. Morally, Pataki was corrupt, but this is definite, concrete corruption by the governor and the pay to play. And just take a look at this woman, Melissa DeRosa. Why is she there? And her father's a big lobbyist. And
the biggest. Randy, we're about out of time. Usually you bring guests with us. I don't know if you want to have any guests to kind of sign off because I know you got to get ready to go to Europe. But either you can sign off in your own voice, or maybe if you have a guest there in the next 30 seconds or so.
Yes. Well, let me just go from this is Richard Nixon and the scurrilous job done by the program interim lamed up program director at WBAI, I think is wonderful. If you can't tell the truth, you lie. And that's what he's done, and I think it's a great job. And I think this is the Reverend Al Sharpton. I will be there for Mr. Credico when they have the protest on Atlantic Avenue with Mitchell Cohen and the other BAI listeners that are concerned. I don't even need a $20 bill for that.
Oh, really? That's something.
Come out on my own, because Mr. Credico
is good Fred the bad. It always has been. It is a straight shooter.
Reverend, we got to run. Reverend Al Sharpton, President Richard Nixon, and Randy Credico. Safe travels. We look forward to speaking to you again next week. Gideon says it's time for a break, so we'll take it right now.
Now, let's return to Focus on the State Capitol on Talk 1300 and 98.7.
And welcome back to Focus on the State Capitol. I was just checking Twitter, looking at people who were retweeting Randy and other tweets about listening to Randy on their show, and there really are a lot of people who were listening internationally, and I thank Randy for that. Randy's a very interesting character. There's no question about it. Interesting person, smart guy, autodidact, which means he's self-taught on a whole lot of things, and he's known in very interesting circles around the world. And he was over, I think, meeting with Julian Assange earlier this year. Now he's heading to Spain. He'll be in Italy and in Spain, and he'll be checking in with us. He's usually always on Fridays if you want to catch him again. And he's a terrific impersonator and comedian with an interesting pedigree, which he talks about occasionally, with many years performing in Las Vegas. And his father was operator of a nightclub and allowed him to meet some of the most famous entertainers of their day back in the 1960s in particular. Well, it's an interesting time in New York State politics, that's for sure. Not a great time, again, for Republicans. We're going to have some important Republican guests on Monday to talk about the New York GOP in particular and who might be a candidate for governor next year. The best hope, and maybe the only hope, would be what Randy was talking about, and that's a serious primary challenger against Andrew Cuomo. My thanks to Randy Credico. My thanks to George Marlin. Most importantly, all of you. My thanks to the veterans out there. Until Monday, stay warm. Bye-bye.